Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama.
Hare Krishna. I am Rajarsi Dasa. Welcome to Hare Krishna today. On today's program, we are going to continue our series on answering the question, what is the ultimate goal of the human form of life? So we had been covering verses from the scriptures on the purpose of human life, and we're going to continue to do so. Last couple verses we did is describing this body, the human body, as a suitable boat for crossing the ocean of birth and death. So now we're going to continue with a verse that compares human life to animal life. This is a popular one, often quoted. Ahara nidra bhaya maitunam cha samanyam etat pashubhir naranam dharmo hitesham adhiko visheshu dharmena hina pashubhi samanaha. Both animals and men share the activities of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. But the special property of the humans is that they're able to engage in spiritual life. Therefore, without spiritual life, humans are on the level of animals. So, a very important verse, because for people in general, they think it is a great achievement, a great accomplishment if they could go to school, study hard, get a good job, make a lot of money, have some good economic situation. But what does all of this amount to? Ahara, nidra, bhaya, maitun. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defense, protecting the body. That's about it. So the logic here is that the common animals are doing that also. What's the big deal? So it's important that we live our life according to spiritual values. That's the one thing that the human being could do that the animals can't do. To break it down into simple words, to know God and to please God. That's called dharma. Dharma is that accountability, that duty towards our maintainer or the source of our existence. So it says here, dharmena hina. Dharmena hina means without dharma. Pashubhi saman. Pashu means beast, animal. In a previous verse we also discussed that. Tarava kim na jivanti, bhastra kim na swasantyuta, na karanti na mehanti, kim grame pashavopari. Kim grami pashavopari, pashu, same word used. Does the village dogs and hogs not eat and discharge semen also? What is the big deal? Is that any big deal for a human being? The animals do it also. So here we should know that to spend your whole life trying to improve the activities of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending without knowing the self, without knowing who you are. Are you this body or are you the soul within the body? To not be able to ascertain this and to not know the soul's eternal relationship with the reservoir of all pleasure and how to tap into that pleasure, animal life. That's what it means. So the scriptures doesn't mix matters. It's quite straight. You live your life simply to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. Then you die a polished animal, a sophisticated animal. Educated animal maybe, but animal nonetheless. Two-legged animal, duipadi pashu. So scriptures give us a choice. Live our life according to dharma. That's what makes us human. Let us take a look at another verse. Nayam deho deha bhajam nriloke kashtan kaman arhati vidbhujam ye tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam shudhiryasmad brahmasokyam tvanantam. This is Lord Rishabhadev speaking, Bhagavatam 5.5.1. My dear boys, of all the living entities who have accepted material bodies in this world, one who has been awarded this human form should not work hard day and night simply for sense gratification, which is available even for dogs and hogs who eat stool. One should engage in penance and austerity to attain the divine position of devotional service. By such activity, one's heart is purified, and when one attains this position, he attains eternal, blissful life, which is transcendental to material happiness, and which continues forever. Great news, right? It continues forever. Happiness we're speaking about. The pleasures we get in this life, they referred to as chapala sukha. Chapala sukha means flickering happiness, momentary happiness. Yes. What can be said about these pleasures of this world? One moment you're happy, next moment you're distressed, you're sad. So the platform of material consciousness, material life, it means duality. Heat, cold, happiness, distress, fame, infamy. It's material. It's the world of duality. This is what is meant by the world of duality. Opposites. Yes. So, in order to experience permanent happiness, we have to exist on the permanent platform, on the platform of the eternal soul. Once we're on the bodily platform, this body is temporary, it is material, and it is pushed around, pushed about by the material modes. We have given this example before. A boat or some object on the water gets tossed about by the waves. The soul identifying with the material body. This body undergoes all types of transformations and changes and impulses. Yes. Someone yell at you and immediately you react in this way. You become agitated, angry, upset, violent because of material identification. Somebody referred to you as your body, right? And you become upset. As though you are the body, they call you big head or ugly or fat or whatever they call you, and you become disturbed because you're identifying, you're thinking yourself to be the body. on the other hand, there's a history of the sage, the great saintly person, Maharaj Bharat. This was not as the king. After the king, he took body as a deer. But when he gave up that deer body, he took birth in a Brahmin family. And he played. He was deaf, he was dumb, he was stupid, just so that they won't push him to get involved in material life. So, at one time, they just put him out in the fields to look over the grains, watchman. So, the king was passing by, Maharaja Rahugana. His servants, they were carrying him on a palanquin shoulder, but one of the palanquin bearers was sick and was only unable to carry, and they had to find someone. So they saw him and they said, oh, he's strong, he'll make a good carrier, come on. But they saw he looked like he was dumb and retarded and whatever. So he'll make a good carrier, and they put him. But as Maharaj Bharat was walking along, there was some creatures, some ants along the way. And out of compassion for these creatures, saintly person, he wouldn't even harm an ant. So Maharaj Bharat, he was stepping this way, stepping that way. And the king was getting a real rough ride up there. So when the king complained, the others, they made their excuses. Is the new man, so he is the one who, so the king said, tell him to get it right or else, I'll punish him. So, Bharat continued this way, that way, escaping the creatures. And then, finally, the king himself got down and chastised him. You fool, and referred to him in bodily terms. You're fat, you're this, you're that. And for the first time, Bharat, he spoke transcendental knowledge, spiritual knowledge to the king. And this pierced the king's dull material consciousness. Bharat said, today you are thinking you are king. You're being carried by servants. Do you know what you were in your past life? Do you know what you would be in your next life? You're identifying me as body. But do you know about the eternal soul within the body? Do you know where the soul came from? Why it is here? What is the purpose of the human form of life? And when Maharaj Bharat spoke to the king, for the first time he had his eyes opened by the torch of knowledge. He had this amazing awakening, a change in consciousness. So, coming in contact with a saintly person, this is the effect. It can put an end to our dull material life. Material life is full of ignorance and bondage. Everything we do in material life, we're putting our foot in our mouth. In other words, every action we perform, we are sentencing ourselves to a reaction that will make our life miserable in the future. That's material life. That's why people, they go through so much hell in their life and they don't know. And they're very conscientious. They want to be happy. But they experience just the opposite, only on account of ignorance, not knowing the laws of nature, what brings happiness, what brings suffering. So it's important that we become awakened or enlightened. So this verse, to analyze this verse a bit, Lord Rishabhadev is speaking to his sons and he's saying that, my dear boys, of all the souls that have taken bodies in this world, 8,400,000 species, souls are taking so many different types of bodies. But he's saying, of the souls that have taken these material bodies, a soul that has a human form should not labor hard day and night just for the same thing that the Vidbhujas, the stool eaters, hogs and dogs are endeavoring for. He should not do that. Instead, tapo divyam. Tapa means penance, austerity. Undergoing some hardship for a greater gain, because they say no pain, no gain. So he's saying you should be willing to take some penance, undergo some difficulty, some hardship. Sometimes you tell people to chant Hare Krishna, and lazy brain, lazy mind, they don't want to concentrate, because to repeat the names of God requires focus, it requires concentration. So what people want is they just want to flow with the mind. The contamination, the lust in the heart is just pushing the mind to contemplate the objects of the senses, and they just like to go along. As the modes present different things, they like to go along. The demands of the senses, the various senses, are demanding. The modes throwing out different things. Oh, here's something for the tongue to latch on to. Oh, nice music. Yes, let us yield to this. So generally, we just impelled, we just attracted by the modes of material nature. So to be a spiritualist, it means niyama. It begins with regulating the senses, not allowing the senses to just wander and latch on to this and that and all, just to go after material things. So only when we can regulate the senses, then we can be able to engage the senses and the mind on Rishikesh. Krishna is called Rishikesh, the master of the senses, and he is Govinda because he is the source of pleasure. He gives pleasure to the senses. So until and unless we can control the senses, how we would be able to fix it in his service? If we can't control the mind, then the mind just drags the senses here, there, everywhere. They just go along. Senses dragging the mind cooperating with the senses. But being a spiritualist means buddhi, using the intelligence, the reasoning, the rationalizing faculty. That is what it means to be a spiritualist. Using the intelligence is not the norm, the urge, the pushing of the tongue and the belly and the genitals is not that. Using the intelligence means to analyze things in the proper perspective. I'm going to get disease, I'm going to grow old, I'm going to die, I have to exit in a while. What should I do? How to utilize my time? So if we do not become awakened by the association of saintly persons and develop some urgency in life, then what happens? We remain casual and complacent, easygoing, thinking, yeah, I'm happy, and then we're kicked out of this body. Dangerous situation. So here, tapo divyam, divine austerity. What for? To get Brahma Sukha, spiritual happiness, to Anantam, that is unending, that is eternal. We should not be satisfied with this body and the temporary bodily pleasures, because it is momentary, flickering, chapala sukha. It will be finished just now. So to utilize this human body as a vehicle to get to our destination for eternal pleasure, that's our real business. So the next verse speaks about the urgency of it. Very interesting verse we have quoted many times from Srimad Bhagavatam 761 by the great devotee Prahlad. Komaramacharit pragyo dharman bhagavata niha durlabham manusham janma tarapi adrupamartadam. One who is sufficiently intelligent should use the human form of body from the very beginning of life. In other words, from the tender age of childhood, to practice the activities of devotional service, giving up all other engagements. The human body is most rarely achieved, and although temporary, like other bodies, it is meaningful, because in human life one can perform devotional service. Even a slight amount of sincere devotional service can give one complete perfection. Even a slight amount of devotional service can give one complete perfection. And the example given is that of the sinful Ajamil. This is a history in a place called Kanyakubja in northern India. Kanyakubja Saduracharo Dasi Patira Jamila. Jamil, when he was young, he was trained up. He had some good training, Brahminical training. But as a youth, he became polluted. One day, he went to the forest on the order of his father to gather paraphernalia for worship. And he saw a sight there that is common in this age. He saw a prostitute almost naked and a drunken man. They were both drunk, in a drunken state, and they were having a good time. They were enjoying themselves. And Ajamil, although he had training and so on, he took this into his mind, and he tried pulling his mind away. He left, he went home, but he contemplated the scene. Now, contemplating the objects of the senses is such a dangerous thing. Krishna says in the Gita, Dhyayato Vishayan Pungsa Sangashteshu Pajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Kamat Krodho Bijayate. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. That's the danger. You are living in Kali Yuga. And sometimes people say, they just take a chance. Let me see what's there on the television. Great if I am on. You have nothing to lose. Only you gain. But you don't always find those auspicious moments. Out of 24 hours, I can't say how many auspicious moments you will get where you can hear about the spiritual world, the spirit soul, God, the all attractive, the process for getting out. I can't see. But chances of you taking in scantily dressed members of the opposite sex or sensuous sights and topics, that's a common thing. Yes. So you allow these impressions to get into the mind. The mind is like a camera, and it stores these things. So Ajamil, he contemplated, and what happened? That he became so attached to that sight that later on he couldn't give up that prostitute in the mind. He went and he found that woman, made some excuse, told his wife, I think you're working very hard, I think you need a servant, I'll bring in a servant. And he brought in the prostitute at home, and soon his wife was out, and he took the prostitute as his wife, lived a very sinful life, had many children with the prostitute, a degraded life. And at the time of death, the Jamadutas, the servants of Yamaraj, came, and they were dragging the soul out of the body. But by the grace of the Lord, he had put his youngest son named Narayan, which is the name of the Supreme Lord. And when the Yamadutas were dragging the soul at the time of death out of this body, in great intensity, he called out, Narayan, Narayan. The Lord took this that he's calling me and sent his servants, the Vishnudutas, who immediately stopped the Jamadutas. And a great dialogue, conversation was there. Yamaduta said, he's a sinful man, he did this, he did that. And the Vishnudutas said, in that intensity, when he chanted the holy name, he eradicated all his sins, and back and forth. And the frustrated Yamadutas had to go back to Yamaraj, the Lord of Death, who actually said to them, the Vishnudutas were right. Ajamil got a second chance. So, a little devotion that was done in his life, he got complete perfection. He got a second chance, he perfected his life, and then the Vishnudutas took him back to Vaikuntha, the spiritual world. This verse is saying, a slight amount of devotional service can save us from the greatest fear, the greatest danger. I'm Rajarsi Dasa saying Hare Krishna, and do join us again next week for a continuing presentation.
Hare